Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of my wonderful and beautiful little lovelies out there. And how I love you all so, and I hope that you're all super duper well, super duper wonderful, and super duper delicious. And that life is treating you most deliciously. So, what did I forget to do yesterday, my delicious little babies? I hope that you're feeling the love. You continue to feel the love, my little honey bunnies. Now, then, yeah, I completely forgot yesterday to do that. Anyway, not to worry, my delicious babies. What's the time, Mr. Wilson? The time is 20 to 4 p.m. in our Old England, my delicious babies, on this 18th of July 2026. And I hope that life is treating you most deliciously. I also hope that if you do happen to have sunshine, that it's very beautiful. For ourselves, the sun it's coming and going. Okay, there are a lot of mankind who happen to be talking about, you know, what I call the grass. Now, it's what came into my noddle. Now, ones that call the word barren, okay, you could call it a name, you could call it something else. Well, anyway, everybody has, there we are, a different version of the name barren. But when I actually look at outside, there are a lot who are talking about the grass, that it looks, I call it barren. It means it reminds me of somewhere where you'd go where it's very dry, and they're not getting much water, and that's how our grass looks at the moment, my delicious babies. Now then, I can hose my back garden because I paid, my rented property, my delicious babies, when I moved in. I paid for a water hose. I specifically asked, I said, would you be able to please fit me a water hose, because I paid for everything when I moved in, my delicious babies. I'm not like, let's just say, one of these tenants who got everything now then, where everything was done really nicely now. No, no. I still have little things that need doing, but I'm just not one to moan about it, my delicious babies. To me, this is a shell. It's simply a shell. It's somewhere where I'm blessed, and my beautiful little babies, that we can get our shut eye, you know what I mean? I can cook, clean, iron and wash, but it's a shell. Okay, my delicious little babies, but nevertheless, it's all right. I've got my front door open, my delicious babies, and that's why I've just come on my video, because I want to just talk about something very quickly now, then I'm going to come off my video, okay? But thank you for any views, for any likes, for the occasional comments now. Okay, my delicious little babies, yes. Okay, now then, so yes, anyway, it doesn't matter. There we are, I get everything done when I get it done. If I do not say anything, it doesn't get done. But maybe I'm just one of these where I just cannot be bothered. I mean, like when workmen have to come in, they have to do things now. Then you have to, well, we could say you have to, but you choose to stand and talk to them or whatever, because you want to watch the job that they're doing. There we are. Okay, to make sure that you can see everything what's going on. But I just like, there we are, peace. You know what I mean, my delicious babies, okay? Not everything, it just drives me crackers. Anyway, my delicious babies, I just like to just have peace, there we are, and tranquility, okay? If I need to work or whatever I need to do, my cooking, cleaning, ironing, washing, yes, then that's what I do, you know what I mean? But other than that, I just like peace and quiet. Anyway, my delicious babies, there's someone call that boring. I happen to call it, there we are, peace and tranquility to my heart. You know what I mean, my delicious babies? Because I do not have to spare a thought, for anything else that's going on. You know, if something does not suit me, suit myself, well, there we are, I just come out of the situation, you know what I mean? There we are, how my noddle operates. You know what I mean, my delicious babies, but please be rest assured, there we are, that I'm always watching. There we are, what's going on. The door's open. You know what I mean, my delicious babies, yes. Anyway, I just want to have a quick little natter now, okay? And I just want to mention something because when I was growing up, when I was just a little girl, I asked my mother, what will I be? Well, actually, I never. So that's a load of bullshit. Came out of No, I didn't. Because when you're growing up, unless there's something, there we are, specifically, I would say, different with a young Ben, okay? For the average little young Ben, they never ask any of those questions, my delicious babies, okay? So, I mentioned this song months ago, my delicious babies, on my videos. And my thoughts are you need to listen, there we are, to the song very carefully. Okay. Because, like I just said, for the average, they wouldn't even ask that question. I would never have asked my dear dad and my beautiful, how I love so, my beautiful mummy bear now then, mum, mam, mother. Remember, there we are, you can say it all different way. You know what I mean, my delicious babies, what I was going to be. Because when you're growing up, all that you really want to do is just go out, have fun, climb, there we are, climb trees, which is what I used to do. We used to have a massive, thick rope and a massive tyre. That reminds me, my delicious babies, not far from where I live, just a couple of feet away. Somebody had put just down there now then a little bit of a tyre. Like when there we are, when the rubber hits a road. Okay, my delicious babies, yes. Mind you, with tarmac, as I've said a long time, and I was taught this from a dear gentleman who happened to do a lot of work on my flats when I first moved in, I paid for. Okay, my delicious babies, so when I eventually move out of this property, there we are, everything is done. You know what I mean? Just like, some have said to myself, they said, well, wow, when they've seen where my fridge freezer is, they said, wow, wow. Is there a shop outlet called Wow? Is it a catalogue one? There we are. Something's just made me say that, Martish, but anyway, let me fast forward. So, yeah, my, yes, sorry, correct English. My fridge freezer is inside a cupboard, which I paid for the electrics to be put through because our kitchen is rather small, so I could not, correct English again, fit, you know, the fridge freezer in. You know what I mean? So it takes up such a lot. There we are. Takes up such a lot of space, Martin, baby. Yes, but of course, my fridge freezer is the ones before the smart fridge freezers. So I would advise anybody out there, my dish babies. I've talked about this. There we are, long time. But anybody who has one, who feels that they're getting all of these new gadgets, I would strongly spare a thought. Otherwise, okay, because when one's there's nothing smart about it, when one's can hear everything now, just like an Alexa, just like our, Merbies, our dog and Burns, just like laptops, anything, Martish babies. At the end of the day, there we are, they can hear everything, isn't it? So I would just strongly advise that ones maybe reconsider. There we are, and maybe go to a second-hand dealer. Okay, Marty, she said, baby, something. There we are. It's just making me say everything what I'm saying today. Anyway, fast forward. So when I was little, okay, Marty, she said, baby's my dear dad was. Let's just say he was very quiet. He never talked about anything, not to his family anyway. He never talked about anything or anything that was going on in his marriage, or he just, there we are. He just never did that. Okay. I'm going to talk about something, then I'm going to rewind. There we are, back to what I'm talking about. So today, my delicious babies, because I have anybody who's listened to my channel, or been so very kind enough to listen to myself, because I could be trying, I could be very trying, as well as being, there we are, the most wonderful, there we are, woman in the world to talk to. There we are, because I am. Okay, there we are. But I can also be very trying. Okay, so I'll go back to that again. I'm a bit like Marmite. You either like me or hate me. You know what I mean? Martish babies, there's no in between. Anyway, so today, because I've got my beautiful dear little Spanish neighbour upstairs, she's so beautiful. There we are, and a beautiful two little babies. She's got a little son, she's got a little beautiful little baby now. Then they're such a beautiful little family. Well, a beautiful dear little Mama and Papa Bear came today from Spain, because she's Spanish, like I've just said. And, they live in Spain. They've got the home in Spain. They're Spanish. Okay, so they've come to visit. Anyway, I've given them hugs and kisses, my delicious babies. It's always, there we are, such a pleasure to see them. They're so beautiful. But what's the reason for my video today, my delicious babies? So each and every time that they come, okay, because with our beautiful little Mama Bear upstairs, she's got her hands full, She's working full time. She's got two small little babies. I've been there. There we are. I've been there big times. You know what I mean? I had two jobs, not one. I had two. You know what I mean? That says one. I had two. Okay. And, when you have to do, different jobs, there we are. And just to make sure the food's on the table, sometimes you have to work overtime. There we are, just to make ends meet. I'm not going to say that at that particular time I was on the breadline. I'm not going to say that, because that would be telling yourselves, my delicious babies, serious lies and porcupines. You know what I mean, my delicious babies, because I wasn't. With myself, I just wanted, there we are, to get something under my belt. Do you know what I mean? Just so that I could clothe and feed my babies, pay the bills, that you could live, go on holidays, there we are, and do these kind of things. Well, I couldn't do it on one job, I needed to. Okay, my babies, and at the time I was with my daughter's dad, so, every little helps. Tesco, ding ding, you know what I mean? Slap my thigh. So you just make sure that everything is done there then, you know what I mean? But what I absolutely adore seeing is when the beautiful little baby now then, because bless him, as soon as his beautiful dear little Nana and Grandad turned up, okay, if you could hear, there we are, the laughter in the back garden behind myself, okay, if you could, there we are, hear the laughter. That dear little baby now then, with his granddad, that is the most, there we are, beautiful thing to listen to my heart, you know. You hear the laughter, the giggles, because he's playing football. The dear little lad now, then little wee little Ben playing football with his beautiful dear little granddad. They're so beautiful. And I was saying to him leading up to them coming, to coming to stay, I said, as soon as your dear Nana and Granddad get here now, I said, you're going to have such a beautiful time. And they always, always do. Okay. To myself, this is real, it's nature, this is us, you and I. And I look out my kitchen window, washing up or something, or going to the garden, and you just hear it, you see it, and it's so beautiful. The giggles, everything. Now let's rewind to when I was younger. So you could probably hear it in the background, the laughter, okay? But it's so beautiful. There we are. It's so beautiful. If anybody has the pleasure of listening, but of course you do have some elderly, like when we first moved here, they wasn't very keen on little babies coming onto the road. And they do have committees, to try to get there we are families off the road so that there's no little bands and it's just solely just made for the older generation, as they call themselves. Okay, Mardish babies, but over the years, younger families have moved in, all different families. Could be like in my case, Spanish, Indian, Polish, Romanian, African, all different families, Mardish babies, okay, but this road was originally where ones would move to, see a property, buy it, and then, they specifically never wanted any little bairns. So even if a little bairn walked on the grass, they'd come out and complain. I mean, come on, there we are. What world are we living in? If somebody complains if a little bairn goes on your grass, the little babies play on my grass all the time. I do not say a word about it. Why should I? They're little babies. If they feel they are comfortable being on my grass, then why shouldn't they be? I'm not going to complain. I just say, whatever you do, just do not trample on my flowers or anything like that now then. But if you want to play, you can play. Do you see what I mean, Martish? So I'm not unreasonable. I'm also a stickler, do not leave anything sweet because then we get the little ants. There's plenty of little ants, isn't there, Martish? Babies like the world alternative. No, not world alternative. Sorry, I got that wrong. World economic. Oh gosh, I'm struggling here. Let's rewind and start again. World Economic Forum or the World Health Organization. There's lots of little ants there. There we are. Isn't there, Martish Bays? They love something sweet, isn't it? Yes. So that's really, just giving you the rundown on what's going on. Anyway, but when I was little, going back to the matter in hand, um, well, the fact of the matter is, it takes my noddle back to when I was really young, and my beautiful, high loving son, beautiful dear little Nana and Grandad. My dear Grandad had not heard from my dad, so he decided to hop on a train. You know what I mean? And come down and see what's going on. And I feel I was only about 5 year old. I was only about 5 year old. Okay, my two babies now, my beautiful dear little Nana. I love them both so much. I miss them so. There we are. I so miss them. You'd never know. Anyway, my two babies, and he said, well, my beautiful dear granddad said, no, you stay here, my beautiful dear little Nana. He said, I'll go and see what's going on. So he come all the way from Hull, my beautiful dear little granddad, down to our Brummie land. Now, when you look at the reception, my beautiful dear little neighbour upstairs, she went to the airport, she went and collected her, she waited, she paid for these paying display, which apparently are most expensive now. There we are. It just gets ridiculous, the price. Anyway, there's no excuse because the land's ours, but somebody else is, there we are, seems to think now they've taken it out of our hands. But anyway, it doesn't matter. There we are, we'll get it back. There we are, we'll get it back. Anyway, my delicious babies, anyway, let's fast forward. So, when I see the welcome and everything, but very sadly, that's not what my beautiful dear granddad had because my dear dad was trying to hide um, his relationship with my, oh, I love her so. I'll always love her so. She wasn't very well, bless my beautiful dear little mammy's soul, but she wasn't very well. But my dear dad, he just didn't want to discuss it. He's just, there we are, such a quiet man. He was silent, but there we are, he was silent but deadly. There we are. That's the best way I can explain it. If anybody was to harm us, me and my sister, there we are, that's a different matter. Okay? But he was silent. There we are, but deadly. Do you understand what I mean? Okay? But the fact of the matter was, my delicious babies, is this. When it comes to relationships, he just didn't want to talk about anything at all, my delicious babies, you know what I mean? He just wanted to keep it to himself. Do you see what I'm saying, my delicious babies? Yes. Anyway, so my beautiful dear granddad got to our front. I'll never forget it. And I was only, like I said, around 5 year old. I was around 5 year old. And I was so excited to see my beautiful dear granddad. But when he got to our door, my dad said, "Everything's all right, Dad." That's what he said. He said, "Everything's all right. There's nothing to worry about here." And as he went to close the door, bear in mind it took 2.5 hours to get from Hull to Brumyland. As he went to close the door, my beautiful dear granddad now, I remember it, he put his foot, in the door. And he said, "I'm not going anywhere." And of course, my dear dad was called a different name. It was like a pet name, if you know what I mean. I do not mean pet as in, you know what I mean. I mean, it was a different name from when he was very, very, very wee young Ben now, wee young little lad. He said, "I'm not going anywhere." He said, "Until you let me in." And of course, in the end, my dear dad had to let me beautiful dear granddad in. So, of course, we were out playing because at that time, there we are, towns were a lot safer. So, there we are, so we could play out. Everybody knew, there we are, where everybody was. There wasn't an issue. Everybody could see each other. You know what I mean? We was on an estate. And if one mammy or daddy never seen, or uncle or auntie or cousins, whatever, somebody else would. So they say, "Well, where's so and so?" There we are. We all looked out for each other. There we are. We did. Okay. Um, and then after that, that's when I spent a lot of time in Hull. A lot more time than in Brumyland. Came out of Space and I was born in Brumyland. But something had shifted. Okay. So, in other words, my dear dad was no longer, from what I could gather, keeping to himself. Well, I suppose the state of his there we are, the state of his marriage and how it had become. Okay, my delicious babies. So, what is it that I'm telling you today? It's like a form of communication. But I had the most beautiful times, when I was young. There we are, the most beautiful. But My dear dad was just not one of these. There we are, where you could open up about anything. He was so closed off, okay? And my beautiful, I love her so, my beautiful, I love them both, okay? But it's just that, well, anyway, it's a different situation. They both had their strictness. But anyway, but the point of the matter is, my delicious babies, is that I just wanted, there we are, to share that with you today. Now, from that time, I was only blessed to get another 4 year with my beautiful dear granddad. He'd been in the Navy, then he'd been a fisherman, then he ended up in a prison as a chief engineer. Well, anyway, he was an engineer in, the jobs that he did. Okay. But there we are, there's just something that I needed to say today. Maybe for anybody out there, if you're on your own and maybe there we are, your relationship's not going very well, or for whatever reason that may be, do not shut anybody else out, because that is not the correct way to be. Okay. And also for the fact that in that 4 year, I mean, my life, I mean, oh gosh, the fun that we had, the fun that we had. Okay, my beautiful dear little Nana, she was never quite the same when my beautiful dear granddad passed. No, she wasn't. Hence the reason why we spent, there we are, more and more and more time with her, so that she wasn't on her own. She wasn't on her own. We had plenty of family in Hull. And then, well, there was other family members. Anyway, it's there we are, such a flipping colossal family that they all went to all of the countries, Canada, America, everywhere. They just, there we are, they just went to other places, Mardish babies. Some stayed in Hull and some never, but some went to other places. But anyway, that's the way life goes. I cannot tell you about the history because I do not know. I do not really know any of my family. There's very little that I know. Okay, Mardish babies, but what I will say is that the love, there we are, that we shared, you know what I mean? So like in our beautiful dear little lad now, little bear now, okay, when you're hearing the laughter, you're hearing everything, because he's with his beautiful dear granddad, the older generation, they're in the 70s, you know what I mean? For myself, for my sister's self, my younger sister, we was not blessed to have this luxury. That doesn't mean no, but I know that, like when I'm looking in the camera now, I can see my beautiful dear granddad. So I know that there we are, he's smiling because he loved the football. He used to take my dear dad and his sister to the football. They used to, Hull Kingston Rovers it was. Never needed to stumble there, you know what I mean? But of course, when you talk about football now, it's all a fix, isn't it? There we are, Mardish babies. Yes, it has been going on for decades, but maybe one's never quite seen it. Anyway, Mardish babies, but that's all I really wanted to say to yourselves. But yes, I certainly believe, there we are, that a problem shared is a problem halved. And with my dear dad, he just had to accept, I don't know, some can call it defeat. There we are, some can call it defeat. It's a relationship that never worked, but you try and hide it away from family and it just gets you nowhere, because eventually, there we are, one's found out. Okay? But then after that, no. I mean, it was so beautiful and wonderful because, we had 4 beautiful years, what was left of my beautiful dear. Oh, I love him forever, my beautiful dear little granddad. Let me tell you what he'd be saying about what's going on now, Mardish babies. I've said this before all my life. Can you imagine what he'd be saying? He's a broad Yorkshire gentleman. There we are. And let me tell you, he never ramped when he was alive with what he had to say. Let me tell you, he never ramped at all. He's done telling everybody, there we are, the way it is and the way it was going to be. And there we are, weren't we tired? It's turned out this way. You see what I mean, Martlish babies? Yes. So that's not myself being prejudiced, racist, and no. It's just he's seen, there we are, for decades before, there we are, how it was going to be. Okay, he'd been to other countries, been in the Navy, you know what I mean? And of course he came back, you know what I mean? And, that was that. But we'll never forget the margarine in Norway, and these days they say that Norway is food man. Nothing against Norwegians, of course. That the food in Norway is delicious and wonderful. Well, let me tell you, to any Norwegians out there, no disrespect to any of you. But when we go back decades ago now, then isn't it? When we see that the margarine, you wouldn't even wipe your ass on. So to see now and hear now what I hear, I heard there we are a lot of other things now, decades ago. There we are. Plus the fact to do with Egypt. My beautiful dear granddad went to Egypt. My beautiful dear stepfather. Well, he wasn't married to my mum. Anyway, it's a separate thing. This is somebody who was very close to myself and treated me like a daughter. So that's something totally different. But he went to Egypt. They had there we are, something very different to say. Now, when I went to Egypt, there we are, my beautiful, how I love her so, my beautiful dear little Nana Beth. She said, oh, should I wish I could come? But she could have come because I offered her to come. I said, would you like to come? And she said, no. I said, we'll pay for you. She said, anyway, she didn't need that. She was very, there we are, comfortable off. But she said no. She said, if you could please just tell me about it. It's a place I've always wanted to go because she always went to Rome. She always went to France. She always went to Spain. Do you know what I mean? Italy. She always went to these places. You see what I mean? But my beautiful dear granddad said no. He said, I'll take you anywhere you want to go on this earth. He said, but I'll never take you to Egypt. And of course, my beautiful dear stepdad, he says no. He said, I'll never take anyone to Egypt. Okay? Now, for myself, when I went to Egypt, there we are, I felt at home. I sort of felt, I don't know, there was something in myself that, like, where I felt comfortable with it. I felt really comfortable. I've never been anywhere else where I felt comfortable, but I felt comfortable in Egypt. Not because of the Muslim religion of what they do. Everybody's religion's different anyway. That's up to everybody else. I'm not even going to go down that road, okay? Everybody has their own religion. I believe in my creator, my beautiful dear creator. I believe in my beautiful dear God within. That's what, there we are, what I believe in. Okay, so nobody can tell myself now then any different. If one's want to tell myself different, get on the back, pedal fast, and if off nicely, off you go, because your services is not required, and that's not myself being rude, please and thank you. I'm just saying that clearly uh, was there we are was saying the same thing, so why is that? But I had a different experience. Okay, my delicious baby, so that's what I'm saying. Okay, and that's really all that I want to say, my delicious little babies. But yes, my beautiful dear little granddad now, I love him so much. How I wish he was still back with, there we are with myself. Beautiful dear little, but how I wish he was back with me so much. You would have loved them. There we are. No joke, you would have loved them. They make the cat laugh. Do you know what I mean? Because it's the old way of saying things, the old way of, there we are, doing things. You know what I mean? Everything that these days, there we are, for most, they've forgotten. There we are, they've truly forgotten. For most. There are some who still, there we are, remember, but for most, they've forgotten. They've forgotten, just there we are, the common sense way, there we are, of living, the common sense way of living. They've completely forgot it. But I used to have so much fun. And it just takes myself back all the time when I look at that. Doesn't mean our beautiful little baby out there now. You can hear the laughter. That is how I used to be. And even very sadly when we lost my beautiful dear little granddad. but I still used to have that fun. I could still laugh and jerk. And so, for anybody out there, all that I'm saying to you is, my delicious babies, okay, if you're feeling sad, no, please do not. And if any of you are so blessed, there we are, like myself, to have memories. Memories like the corners of my mind. But in this case, it's not too painful to remember. Yeah, it's a blessing to remember, because when I'm looking through my eyes and I'm listening through my ears, so am I beautiful, dear little Nana and Grandad. They're seeing what I can see. And you're beautiful, dear little Nana and Grandad, beautiful, dear little mum, dad, mama, papa bear, uncle, auntie, cousins, nieces, nephews, carers, family, friends. They too, what you're seeing through your eyes and hearing through your ears, they can still hear and see. And that's how I want to leave my video today, my delicious babies. So wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon or evening, please have a super duper delicious time. You only get one life, my little honey bunnies. Sending peace, love, harmony and bright blessings to each and every one of you. May your beautiful little selves and your beautiful little families, may you all be fully protected. Can you hear the laughter? That doesn't mean no. Can you please hear it? It's so beautiful. Look, I'm sort of grinning ear to ear. It's just so beautiful. Okay, and this is, there we are, what I want for the world. I want, there we are, everybody to feel beautiful. You know what I mean? Okay, but the only way we can accomplish this, okay, is to, in my view, is to take steps. Okay, and you need to take bits and pieces. There we are, out of what you need to take bits and pieces out of, for anybody who's so very blessed to see and so very blessed to hear. Yes? Okay. So until my next video, thank you so very much to anybody for any views, for any likes, for the occasional comments, okay? And I will say, there we are, I will say this, there we are, I can still see my beautiful granddad now as I'm talking to yourself. So from my beautiful dear little self, my beautiful dear little granddad, my beautiful dear little Nana Bear, goodbye, love you, bye-bye.